working with a 9 to 14-year-old soccer player, like how are you structuring training sessions? Because from the coaches that I've talked to, they said, hey, you should have fun and make it enjoyable. But also, how do you balance while focusing on developing like a winning competitive mentality in a 9 to 14-year-old player? Like, how are you structuring those trainings to make it like as productive as possible?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was working with that age group specifically during my time in the East Coast,
Okay.
uh, working for a smaller youth club, but an excellent youth club called Beach FC.
Okay.
And I have a lot of experience with that specific age group. And um, to be fair, that age group is an easy one because you don't need to motivate them day to day to come and play.
Mm.
Um, I always say this, that only the coach can ruin the fun. Only
Wow.
the coach can ruin the experience and make sure that the kids are not having fun because we are doing something that is not fun for them. I give you an example. How many times you walk out on the soccer field, any soccer field in any part of the world, and you see 10-year-olds running cone to cone and passing cone to cone without any opposition, and you're definitely not gonna see fun there. And I understand a lot of coaches are saying that you have to get the fundamentals right, and some of the things that they need to learn by 9-14, but you need to find a way to do it where they're having fun, because that's the time when you lay that foundation down about the game of soccer, and not just
Yeah.
about soccer, just in general, like exercise, to
Yeah.
enjoy being in a team environment, and all that kind of stuff cannot be done if the training is not fun, because then the kids are not going to come, and it has nothing to do with that. um, Generally speaking, I think it is important to understand that training sessions are for the players and not for the coach.
Wow.
Um, the capacity to have an absolute control of the situation, any situation, including the training session, the game, or any part of the developmental process of the young players, is the desire of many, many, many coaches.
Yeah.
And in being able to do so, it is easier to have disciplined, you know, pupils, rather than people who think about alternatives. And
Yeah.
this linear intervention helps the development of like robotic footballers and players, and just athletes in general, who need the constant external feedback and from the coach to act during the match. So in other words, if you set up the training sessions where you are in the center, you're not only not making it fun for the kids, but whatever you're trained, whatever you're practicing, it's not going to come back in the game, because they're constantly going to look at you, like, coach, what did you tell me to do? What did you tell me to do?
Yeah.
So you need to let the players enjoy themselves, express themselves. At the end of the day, the game of football is an art form, and we need to let the little artists to do what they need to do, and that, I think, it is very, very important in the age group that you mentioned. You mentioned winning mentality. What I do, and maybe it's a small thing,
Yeah.
what I do is I do leaderboard. Every drill that we do, there can be a winning team and then the losing team,
Mhm.
and the winning team members get a point, and the losing team members don't get a point. And during the season, I keep up with those points, and that way, there's something. And of course, they know I'm not gonna put together the starting lineup based on that leaderboard, but it is a
Wow.
good indication for them of, you know, how am I doing during the training session? It's an extra motivational force to
Yeah.
come and be ready and compete right away.
Well, and that's a powerful response. So, like, and that part too as well. I think, like, I'm not a coach, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, I think soccer, and for me, from what I play, like, I've never played at the highest level, obviously, but I think it's not just about player development, but personal development, right? Like, as a player, are you developing like yourself, your confidence, your self-esteem, your self-worth? Are you believing in yourself? And I think a huge part is having fun, because I remember, like, my father was never there for me when I went to games. So he would kind of just drop me off in games and said, all right, good luck. And then I'd be like, what do I do now? Where do I go? Do I meet my coach? Do I go with my teammates? Do I go ask somebody? And so I was just there trying to figure it out. And so when I scored a goal, sometimes the other parents had to cheer me on.
All
And
right.
sometimes it was just silent. And so I was just like, I needed that, right? And so I needed someone to like push in fun with me, but then also not having that allowed me to kind of like get used to like, okay, this is real life. Like sometimes when you accomplish something, someone isn't going to go and give you, hey man, good job. You're just going to have to keep doing on the other thing. And so I think that's super important. But
Right.
moving on to part B of this question, like, what does a winning mentality consist of? Like, is it developing confidence in yourself? What do you think that winning mentality looks like inside and outside the pitch of soccer?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think winning and winning mentality must be the result of a well executed style of play. And what I mean by that is, as a coach, you need to know what you want to see on the field, right?
Okay.
And that needs to be communicated towards the players. And if it's not communicated to the players, then the players will lose confidence and will not understand, what direction they need to play, what they need to do on the field. And when that happens, it is really hard to get to winning mentality, because
Yeah.
then the players will be all confused, and all they trying to figure out is what should I be doing? I'm confused. Winning mentality consists of the consistent message about how we want to play. And if we keep playing that way, the way that we agreed as a team, as a community, that we want to play that way, then winning will come as a result of that.
Oh,
Um, and never forget how strong that is when 11 players. When it comes to soccer, it's 11
yeah.
players, but in basketball, it's the same with 5.
Yeah.
11 players get together and going towards the same goal. That is a very, very powerful thing. And it's kind of like a drug. Once a player understands how powerful that is and how good that makes him feel, and how his participation makes it fun for him, or her, it's gonna be a drug that he never wants to, or she never wants to get away from. So I think again, setting a goal, which is in this regard, it's the style of play. Setting a goal that, okay, we want to play this way, and trying to convince the players that, listen, all of you need to drive the same direction, and when that happens, it will just roll with itself, because the players will experience that feeling, pulling to the same direction, and they won't be able to get out of that, because it's one of the best feelings in this world. For the individual player, I think confidence is rooted in feeling comfortable with the teammates, with the coach, with myself, and the environment overall, including the parents and the fans. I think what you said about it would have been nice to have your own parent to be on the sideline and cheer you on. That is very important, to know the player, what he or she needs.
Yeah.
Communicate with him or her, and figure it out, because confidence is about that. It's about am I comfortable with my teammates? Am I comfortable with my coach? Am I comfortable with the environment in which I'm going to play? And again, winning mentality will not happen, because that's a high level of notion. The winning mentality notion is a high level thing, which doesn't come easy. And so if the player doesn't feel comfortable, if the player is worrying about everything else, then about performing and being the best version of himself or herself on the field, then it will never come to that. So I do think that for the individual player, it is very important to feel comfortable, and then we can step towards winning mentality.
Yeah, and I guess, well, then how do you make like an environment comfortable? Because I was just yesterday's interview was with the USL coach below the MLS, and he said part of it is because there's, for me, like there will be some coaches, and not all of them, who will like, or parents on the outside will say, oh wow, this player is shy, right, with this team. But put him in a different environment, the guy can easily become one of the most confident players and one of the most leaders on the team, right? And I guess depending on that situation and the environment, for you, how do you build that comfortable environment where that player feels comfortable and confident and can actually trust you as a coach to show them, hey, this is what we're going to do and this is what we expect in order to accomplish that outcome or that goal?
You kind of answered the question, because I wanted to say the same thing, that it starts with me.
Okay.
It starts with me as a communicator, because I need to be able to communicate, again, my vision about the team. And I'm responsible to set the rules of the environment. I'm responsible to set the rules of the environment on and off the field. I need to be able to communicate with the players, saying, this is what you're allowed to do and this is what you're not allowed to do.
Okay.
And if I can be very clear on that, and a lot of times I see that we blaming the players a lot about them making a mistake. Meanwhile, the truth is that me as a coach, me as a leader of the pack, I wasn't clear enough in my vision, and I wasn't clear enough with my rules and constraints and regulations.
Mm.
So I do believe that the responsibility ultimately falls on the coach. And of course, there's a lot of instances when the players mess up, and you need
Yeah.
to be there, support them in their bad moments too. It's a cliche, but I do believe in it, that at the end of the day, we are family, we are a community.
Mm.
When it comes to sports, we spend so much time together that there's inevitably you have to be very close to each other,
Wow.
or you're doing something very wrong if you're not close. And once that happens, once we establish that we are family, we are one community, we need to support each other on good and bad moments as well.
Wow.
And that comfort, and then that comfortable environment that you were talking about comes from that. And also, I must mention this. Not every player is the same way. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I never coached on the professional level, and I'm pretty sure a professional coach can give a different perspective,
Yeah.
and more experience as well. But not every player is the same. You need to deal with the players differently. Every player have different needs when it comes to where they're coming from as well, from what family background, from what socioeconomic background, what mental background, what skill background. Like, all these things needs to be considered in order to deal with the player. And it is an extremely difficult job, to set up an environment comfortably for everybody. But the coach needs to work towards that, and I truly believe that.
Okay. So now moving into going deeper on confidence, like, have you ever been in a situation where you've coached, or maybe that player was on your team and you were a coach who was a super confident player and a natural leader and communicator? If so, like, how did that player, like, I guess, push forward or accelerate? Did it make your job easier as a coach relying on that player? Or did it actually cause you to lose control a little bit? Because I played with players who were just so intense, so good communicating leadership, that they almost wanted to lead themselves and coach themselves and like take the role from the coach. It's a weird position. I'm not sure if you've been in that before.
No, I mean, it makes sense, that question. Allowing players, I think, to express themselves, including leadership qualities, is a very intricate process.
Hmm.
As I said, there was a Hungarian soccer player that, I'm from Hungary, by the way, but
Okay.
uh, there was a Hungarian soccer player that said, who played for Ajax. He was the number 14 after Johan Cruyff left. And he was a very powerful man, and I'm pretty sure he was inspired by that process of
Yeah.
being part of the Ajax family, and said that anybody that looks at the game as not an art form is lying to itself. So I do think, and I repeat myself, I do think it's an art form. The game is an art form. Everybody's out there is an artist. When you see
Mhm.
somebody being aggressive off the field, that's his or her true
Yeah.
expression of himself or herself on the soccer field. That's how he or she expresses what's inside of her or him. Uh, and and we need to consider that very heavily when we are looking at the individuals. What I mean by that, when it comes to leadership, is if somebody wants to lead, we need to let them, and
Wow.
and
Okay.
and we need to guide them as well, because leadership doesn't come easy. It doesn't come. Sometimes it comes naturally, sometimes it doesn't. But some people don't even know that they have leadership qualities, and they are excellent leaders. Some
Yeah.
people don't say a word, and they could be the best leaders out there because they lead
Yeah.
by example. So I do think that coaches need to be careful on the preferences we make on who to allow to have a leadership role and who do not. Um, Not always the best players make the best captain. Not always the best players make the best leader. Sometimes you need to pick out, the captaincy and the leadership roles based on, again, and I keep going back to this, based on the vision that you have and the vision that you communicated to the players. I give you an example. Let's say I wanna talk about a team that is tough mentally, and we are not getting yellow cards and red cards. You're not getting
Yeah. Yeah.
unnecessary
Perfect.
unnecessary fouls. We are not starting fights. Anything that happens on the field, we are keeping discipline, and we representing the club, and et cetera, et cetera. We know this kind of thing. And then I point out a captain or a leader on the team that likes to talk trash, curses on the field, and
Yeah.
and does things that, maybe it doesn't fit into that vision that I just communicated to the team. My player is going to look at me and say, Coach, you were talking about all these values and all these things that we want to keep on the field, and then you picked out that guy. So it needs to be in line. It needs to be consistent. The vision that you said, that you communicated to the team, it needs to be kept intact, and you cannot deter from it. And when it comes to leadership, I think that's the point. So in summary, you need to allow players to express themselves,
Okay.
and that includes leadership. But also, you need to be very careful of who you allow and who you prefer to be that leader on the team, because your vision needs to be consistent with that choice.
Yeah. Okay. Powerful information. So now on the flip side, have you ever had a player who was kind of less confident, was afraid to maybe communicate? And, since like you talked about playing a mentally tougher team, I mean, since coaching mental toughness isn't like a one size fit all, like if you tell someone, hey, I need you to be more aggressive, that may not work for another player, right? And it could for this one. How do you tailor and help a player who struggles mentally on the field? Like as a coach, what questions are you asking yourself to figure out, okay, how can I get this player to maybe be more aggressive? Like again, and depending on the vision that you have.
Right now, absolutely. And Stephen Hawking once said that, he said that, I think the next century will be the century of complexity.
Mm,
And with that, how's that connected to this topic? It connected because it means that everything is everything. Everything is connected with everything. We cannot look at the issue of mental toughness as a isolated issue that needs to be dealt with in a fragmented way or in a departmentalized way from all other aspects that might play in a role in the situation. A player could be going through a tough time in school.
yep.
Perhaps he's dealing with deep issues we have no idea about.
Yep.
So I think the answer is try to get to know each player individually, because if you get to know each player individually, because of the complexity of each individual that is part of a team, then you can pinpoint, maybe how to deal with that player to get through those tough moments and teach the mental toughness with that issue. Again, I give you an example. Let's stay with the captain that I selected that doesn't really represent my vision. How
Yep.
can I change that captain's idea about how to behave? Am I taking him off a captaincy? Am I maybe having individual talks with him, trying to figure out, is there something not right at home? Is he dealing with something, with his parents, or in school, maybe has a new girlfriend and that drives him crazy. I need to
Yep.
know what he's dealing with. Maybe he's having some issues with one of his teammates. That's why he's on edge and perhaps cannot represent my vision the way that he's supposed to. And once you get to the deep down of the issue, then you can perhaps choose a way to solve that issue. And again, you can go away from understanding every individual as a complex being that has multiple sides and multiple aspects, and all those things are interrelated with each other. And if you try to fragment it and you're trying to take it off as this kid is mentally not tough, that is not going to answer your question. Then you are going down on a one-way trip, and I don't think then you actually helping the player. And
Yeah.
obviously, as coaches, we are there to help the players.
Yeah. Okay. So now going more into like the mental toughness, mental resilience from the coaches that I've talked to, some of them purposely place not players, but their entire team in adversity. Like I had a coach from Swansea City, his name is Darren. He said that he would take his players. Let's say they got the chance to go to Italy, and so Italy, for some reason, from what he said, is known for like trash talking and trying to get into their head. And he said he had purposely placed them in that situation to develop them, right? Always trying to constantly develop their players. How do you, as a coach, or even for parents, how can parents squeeze the most out of a player, putting them in challenging situations, but not breaking them down to the point where they're like, wow, I can't even do this? right?
Wow, tough question. I do think that again, going back to the comfort part, um, it is difficult to drive players through, especially young players, through these processes. Sometimes, us as adults are not even sure of, like, of every reaction that we are doing on, in our private life is the
Yep.
correct one. So how can we teach a player to have the correct response to certain situations?
Mm.
Um, I think we are there to observe. We are there to observe the personality traits and the behavior that they show within the team environment. And because, again, going back to the same thing again and again and again, we
Hmm.
set up our rules. We always need to revert back and look at, okay, what did we ask him to do in those situations? Did we
Wow.
even communicate if what our expectation is in certain situations? And if we did, and it was clearly communicated, then we can have an advice to that player of, okay, maybe that response wasn't the right response, or maybe you should have approached it this way. And sometimes what I like to do, and this is a new thing, because us coaches, we are control freaks. We want to control every piece of everything regarding to the team and the game. But at the same time, we need to go away from it and try to give up that control, and maybe as the players, as the teammates, solve it with them as a teammate, not as the coach. Be a
Wow.
teammate for them and ask, hey, look, what would have you done? What do you think? What do you the next, your teammate, your best friend, what does he think you should have been doing? So I think involving them in the learning process as well is very important. And also, people always say that the best way to learn is to make a mistake. So you need to really concentrate on that aspect. When
Wow.
somebody makes a mistake, make sure that you take advantage of that, try to spin it in a positive way and make it into a learning experience instead of a miserable experience.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and again, it's a great way, the coach that you mentioned, it's a great way to do it. Put them into different environments and make sure that you kind of force a reaction out of them,
Yeah. Pretty
because that way the mistakes can come out and stuff like that. And not just on the field, because I'm pretty sure playing against Italian teams is already a challenging thing on the field, but
Oh
off
yeah.
the field stuff too, and it's a good way to bring them out from their own environment, put them into a different one, and see how they do, and make it as a learning experience.
Wow. Very powerful stuff. It's gonna take. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it to get it.